Oh, friends, be not careless of the virtues with which ye have been endowed, neither be neglectful of your high destiny. Suffer not your labors to be wasted through the vain imaginations which certain hearts have devised. Ye are the stars of the heaven of understanding, the breeze that stirreth at the break of day, the soft flowing waters upon which must depend the very life of all men, the letters inscribed upon his sacred scroll. Be ever mindful. Make me as a lamp shining throughout thy land, that those in whose hearts the light of thy knowledge gloweth, and the yearning for thy love lingereth, may be guided by its radiance. Da 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 da. Oh, friends, be not careless of the virtues with which ye have been endowed, neither be neglectful of your high destiny. Suffer not your labors to be wasted through the vain imaginations which certain hearts have devised. Ye are the stars of the heaven of understanding, the breeze that stirreth at the break of day, the soft flowing waters upon which must depend the very life of all men, the letters inscribed upon his sacred scroll. Be ever mindful upon his sacred scroll. Be ever mindful.
One of the things that you really talk about as being key to reducing high conflict is breaking out of the binary. The idea that you can't sort of reduce a situation, whether it's political or personal or professional, to the idea that there are only two sides or that there are only two possible solutions. And when you say institutions don't come from God, you actually do talk about one faith that you saw and learned about in the context of naturally setting up a system that does not reduce things to political parties or to political binaries. And I wonder if you could just talk about the Baha'i faith as what you saw it being able to teach us about how to do politics better.
Yeah, it's funny because I didn't know really anything about the Baha'i faith before I started working on this, but the book was really about, casting a wide net and seeing, are there examples of institutions that do conflict better, institutionally, in sort of enshrined in what they do. And the Baha'i faith is really interesting. The concept of it is that we're all connected, right? There is no us or them. So sort of fundamentally, foundationally, the idea is that we're very interdependent. So in some ways, it's particularly appropriate for this moment in history when we are so interdependent, as we are seeing with the pandemic and many other things. So the idea is that the Baha'is revere Jesus Christ and the Prophet Muhammad, believing that all major religions come from one spiritual source. Started in the mid 1800s in Iran, has spread just about everywhere. There are 150,000 adherents in the United States, with the largest community in India. But anyway, what's interesting is, so that, it's a pretty significant, small, but, global faith. And there are no ministers, no clerical leaders to run things. So how do they make decisions, right? So what they do is, and this is essentially one form of politics, each spring, everyone in each of the 17,000 Baha'i locations gathers together to elect leaders. So, it's close to a pure democracy operating in some 233 countries, right? But here's the twist. Everything about these elections is designed to reduce the odds of high conflict. Because the thing about high conflict is, once you're in it, it's very tricky to get out. It's very magnetic. And lots of psychological and sociological reasons for that. But the ideal is to stay out of it, right? Like, don't let it start. So these Baha'i elections, there are no parties allowed, no binary categories. People are not allowed to campaign for a position, even if they want it. You can't even discuss who would be the best person. You can only discuss which qualities are most needed. And then when they do the election, it's basically a pretty, sober process. After a prayer, each person writes down the names of 9 people who they think have the experience and character to lead the community at that moment. There's secret ballots, and then the 9 winners, are announced. There's no celebrating. It's considered a duty, not a victory, right? And then once they have the people in place and they have to make decisions for the community, deal with conflicts that arise and budgets and all that sort of thing, they have some other traditions in place to keep the ego in check and keep high conflict less likely. One of which is their meetings are called consultations, and they do things like, if you propose an idea, if I, Amanda, bring to the table an idea, once I propose it, it's no longer my idea, it's the group's, right? So there's like these little things that sound small, but actually play into how humans work, and particularly in conflict, to help reduce the odds of the kind of binary us versus them dynamic that we know tends to lead to high conflict. So it's kind of interesting.